Hello and welcome to Man's Model Moments Midweek Model Meet. So we have been absent for the last couple of weeks for various reasons and return now with a topic that's kind of on point, which is really returning after a break. So we have some guests coming in tonight. So straight off the bat, let's bring in Gary from Gary Stuff.
Hey,
Good evening, Gary.
how you doing, fella? You right?
I'm not doing too badly. Have had a pretty good week.
Excellent.
My girlfriend's been in Barcelona. That isn't why I've had a good week. But,
Yeah.
it's just been one of those things where when she's been away, a lot of things have got sorted. So as regular viewers to the channel will know, this is nothing to do with modelling. This is entirely real life drama. I've been going through a financial settlement for my divorce for the past 18 months or so.
Oh my goodness.
We've been separated since 2018, like 6 years. So, and finally came to an agreement this week. So that's a massive weight off my mind.
Well done, you.
And it's not everything I'd hoped for. She's getting a very good deal, but I'm just glad it's over.
Yeah.
Obviously, all has to be done by the solicitors and stuff, but yeah, at least that's can look forward to the future a bit more.
Right.
Get a bit more investment in the shop, which would be great. Managed to get ahead of myself putting up videos, so I got a review of the Bristol Bulldog on Monday. I've got one of the ICM Burger Panther with a panel camera for Turret tomorrow. I'm just finishing off details of video for Saturday. So it's the first time I've actually been ahead of myself in my YouTube schedule for a long time.
Yeah.
As you know, Gary, it does take a bit. It is. What about yourself? What have you been up to?
I've finished my Liberator today. My Airfix Liberator, finally.
Excuse me, by the way, while I eat some of my frozen cocktail, celebratory.
Perfectly okay. You're allowed to celebrate that, my friend. You really are. Yeah, so I've been finishing the Liberator. I've started a Matchbox.
How did it all go together? Did you have any issues with it?
No, nothing at all. It's interesting that you go through the build and you think, what's that? What's that for? Like on the tires, the main wheel tires, there's a tiny little hole on the top of the tire. I think pretty sure Liberators didn't have a hole on the top of the tire. And it's not until you actually put it onto the gear leg, there's a tiny little projection at the top of the gear leg to make sure the flat spot's in the right place.
Oh, that's nice.
Rather than putting a sort of a big slot like they do on the nose wheel to put it in place, there's this tiny little bit at the top. So, I see what you did there, Chris, mate. Well done. That's really cool. The big problem, of course, is nose weight. Is getting the nose to sit down.
Well, same with this beast, the Marauder. That's ICM 48 scale Marauder, and trying to get. Actually, you've got a nice compartment here, below which you don't have to put on. Obviously, as you can see, until you've actually done it. So, I only managed to get a little bit in those spaces between the nose gear, and I guess the Liberator is very similar.
That's my one so far.
Oh, excellent! It's a lovely kit, isn't it?
It's an absolute beauty. I mean, the things, the old saying, you cut the bits off the frame, put them in the box, shake them, and out comes the kit. And it's not far off of that. The fit is beautiful. The detail is quite astonishing.
And most things you won't see when it's swallowed up by the.
Absolutely. You could say the same with the Liberator, to be honest. If you have the bomb bay doors closed and the waist gun doors closed, there are precious few tiny little windows to look in at the days of work you put in.
Yeah.
Detailing the walls and stuff like that. And you think, I understand.
The story is, don't put it in and spray it black.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just kind of, I understand it, but I spent a lot of time doing that stuff. And, without all those, you could just leave off probably about 2/3 of the interior. Just
Yeah.
leave some structural bits if you're going to have it all closed up, and get away with it, you know. But it's I've found that on the Gecko KT ambulance, if you
Yeah.
have the back doors closed, there's something like 200 parts you can get away with not using.
It's just a
It's
box then, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, it's all the interior. It's so detailed and so many bits. You say, yeah, forget that. Yeah, it's an ambulance. It's fine.
I think it's great though that we have the option, right? I mean, you can do
Oh
so
yeah.
much with it. I mean, if you wanted to do, because people always say, you know, if you make a mess of a kit, oh, turn it into a wreck. Well, actually, a wreck requires more work because you have to do parts of the interior.
Oh,
But actually, a kit like this, you could do a wreck quite easily because it's all there.
mm,
It's just them revealing pieces, you know, doing the work on the actual wreckage and stuff.
mhm.
It would just be, I would feel wrong though.
Yeah.
I've got to get over that
Yeah.
psychological bit of just like, you know, look towards the end. Don't think about what you're doing, about how you're
Mhm.
mutilating this beautiful kit.
Yeah.
Think about what it will be.
Absolutely. Absolutely right.
So was all of your Liberator, um, let's say QC issue free?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Um,
Mine
yeah.
was two of
Um,
the screws of mine were pretty badly warped.
really.
Yeah,
The
like
only
by
thing, the only thing I found not straight away useful was I think the can't remember, is it the rear turret that's got the door in the back of the moulding? So you got a door to fit. You got a clear moulding. You fit a door into the back. I can't remember if it's the rear turret or the front turret.
right.
That clear part was quite splayed out, and I had to sort of close it together to put the rear door on, tack it with some quick drying cement, and then that was okay after that. But that was quite splayed out.
Hmm.
But I can't think
Yeah,
of anything on the kit otherwise. It was
yeah. My main fuselage and the port wing, I think it was, the frames, the sprue frames for those were warped across the frame
wow.
about a centimetre and a half,
Oh
like
my goodness.
across it, like bowing.
Yeah.
All of the others were perfect. So
Boeing as in Boeing, as opposed to Boeing as in Seattle-based airliner
exactly,
manufacturer.
yes, there was nobody was killed in the
Yeah.
manufacture. If there are any Boeing people out there, I'm not accusing anybody, and I don't want to be
Yeah.
specially rendered anywhere.
Yeah.
Uh, but no, it was. I haven't built the Liberator. I have one, and I have it out, but I kind of was focusing on the Marauder
Mm,
because I was kind of. I've got the old Academy Liberator, which actually isn't bad.
mhm.
Um, and I was thinking rather than do as everybody, because you know a lot of people got the kit early, a lot of people
Mm.
did reviews and stuff, and I thought I don't just
Yeah.
want to do the same thing, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
people see elsewhere. So I thought I'd do just a straight side by side comparison when I get to mine, but I'll leave it for a little bit too
yeah. Mhm.
for the
Yeah,
crest to go
I
down.
do that when I have to wait for the thing, and it's like 3 days after everyone else has got one, mine arrives, and I think, "Yeah, I never wanted to do a straight, box review immediately anyway,
Yeah.
really. I thought
Well,
I'd be cool about this one and leave it back, and yeah, you know,
if that's the way you truly feel, Gary, you should open a shop because then you don't get stuff for like weeks.
yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I must say, if Airfix, anybody from Airfix is listening, the Bulldogs arrived unexpectedly. Actually, I wasn't expecting to get them, and three of them just turned up. I thought actually what was arriving was the Shannon lifeboats, so I
Yeah.
prepared a whole list because it was the most pre-ordered kit
Well, yeah.
this year from Airfix.
Yeah.
So I had a whole bunch of like Royal Mail like postage stuff ready, and then they
Yeah.
turned up and no Bulldogs. I'm like, shit, I haven't
Yeah.
done the wrong things.
Probably next week, the Shannon, I guess.
I think it's a little bit longer actually.
You really, because they've got a press event next week for it. So,
Yeah,
but I guess it depends on
which I'm not going to. I don't know if you are, but
which can take. Yeah, I'll be there. Yeah, I'll
no,
be having.
I've yeah. Apparently, owning a shop is you're not allowed,
Oh right,
which
I
which
see.
is bullshit.
Yeah,
Um,
obviously,
but yeah, I don't know.
that's crazy.
I've also made some honest videos about Airfix, so perhaps Dale doesn't like me anymore.
Oh, I'll
I
tell
mean,
him.
it's that's the way
Mate,
it
I'll
is.
tell him to his face as well. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
no, I mean the
I guess
Bulldog.
it's where the containers ended up. Whether it turns
Yeah.
left into Harwich or right into a Friedrichshafen first. You know?
I think it was. This is my recollection, because obviously I can't give away
because I thought
proprietary
it's supposed to be
information.
what it due out at the beginning of the month originally.
I think that was true, and I think now it's more looking like the beginning of next month.
Right.
So, I mean, I think most people. For me, it's a bit odd, I must say, that they're doing the press event for the Shannon, because, like I say, it's been the most pre-ordered kit for Airfix. The Dora Wings Fairy Delta 2 was the only thing that competed with it for pre-orders for me so far this year.
Yeah.
Might be other pre-orders that outdo it if they're released or announced. So they already have the hype. You know, people are already excited. I think it looks great. I think the idea to do a starter kit vessel, you know, affordable, that sort of F-35 price point, I think that's great. I think it's, to be honest, I would say it's the best decision Airfix made in their 2024 release. I think the rest of it is a bit meh for me. But I think, you know, and the pre-orders seem to show it. So why do a press event on it? It's like, unless they've got if they've got another lifeboat that they're going to release, you know, so they got then the 3, that would be great. I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think that's happening either somehow. No. I really don't.
I would love to be surprised. So
yeah. We'll I mean, I guess it's all like trying to connect in with the 200th anniversary of the RNLI and all this sort of stuff, and you know, some of the value of the kit goes to them and all this sort of stuff. And it does look good. It's very, very, very good PR. But as you say, it's not necessarily going to sell them more kits.
No, which kind of is the point of a press event.
I would have thought.
But I mean, I guess it's the right kind of time. Although I suppose earlier in the year might have been a little bit more preferable. I guess in that, you know, I guess the RNLI's most busy time is going to be when people start going down to the beaches and start doing stupid stuff and getting stranded and stuff. And let's face it, they do some pretty awesome stuff, and they're all volunteers. So, you know,
that's the astonishing thing. I think a lot of people from overseas don't really understand. These guys are all volunteers. It's not a government run and government funded and all that. It's volunteers, and it's run on donations.
I mean, to be honest, I think the government would be better served putting some of the BBC license fee into the RNLI, because the stuff that the BBC is doing over the last couple of years has been, well, I don't think this has been as helpful as the RNLI, let's say that.
Well, just give them a lot of tax breaks, a lot of VAT breaks and all that sort of stuff, and just help them get along. But the only problem is, of course, once you get the government involved, they start interfering. And that's the last thing an expert organisation like the RNLI needs, is someone in Whitehall telling them how to drive a boat.
Yeah, an administrator saying, well, of course you must do. It's like, piss off.
Yeah. Have you done a full safety analysis of this launch? Yeah, they're in danger. We can help. Job done. No.
I mean, RNLI members have lost their lives going to save people. They go out in all kinds of weathers, you know, ridiculous seas. They are true heroes, you know, men and women all. So yeah, you're absolutely right. The last thing they need is a health and safety assessment. So we do have John Alec coming in a little bit later. Obviously, being in the States, he's I was going to say a little bit behind. That sounds rather derogatory for our American friends. Time-wise, a little bit behind. Because I think he's got some good insights, especially as he's just come back off from holiday. But I wanted to just put this up, if I can get my computer to do this. So this is a video that I put up how long ago? 2 weeks ago, which was really, you know, what happened before Man's Model Moments. So this kind of charts. So if you haven't seen this, please watch it and go and tell people about it, because the views are always welcome. But basically, this chart's kind of what I did before the channel and my modeling journey from when I started as a child. There's no record of that, obviously, but I talk about it up until, you know, I had 2 major breaks for modeling in my modeling journey, my career, if you like. I'll stop sharing that now. And each time coming back was a little bit different. So obviously this second time, this is my second return to modeling a couple of years ago, starting the channel. Obviously very different modeling world to when I first came back to modeling, kind of just before having a family, back in the mid-90s. And so just wanting to kind of talk about and get questions. And again, if you have questions in the chat, please put question before, because it makes it easy. Well, I won't say it makes it easy. It makes it easier for me when I remember to actually check all the comments to pick out your questions. So, and apologies to anybody that I miss questions from. It's not intentional. It is probably because I've missed it. So feel free to repeat yourself if we don't get to something. If not, I will try and answer any questions that we didn't get to in the comments of the video afterwards. But I really want to talk a little bit about, what it's like coming back to modeling after a break, because I think all of us have had, not all of us, but a lot of us, a lot of the people that have commented on videos, that have come into the shop and talked to me about modeling, are coming back to the hobby after a break. And to the point of, we've been not on MMM for the last couple of weeks. Sometimes life gets in the way and you need to do other things. So you have these little mini breaks, maybe you go on holiday for a couple of weeks, maybe you're ill for a while, whatever it is. So how do you get back into modeling? How do you adjust, is there things that you need to relearn, things that you need to come back to, all that kind of thing. So what about you, Gary? How's your modeling journey? Have you had breaks from it during your life, or has it been continuous?
Just the one break from the age of about 17 through to about 5 years ago. So mid-50s. So yeah, almost
sort of
40
life
years.
Break.
Totally. Yeah, a kind of don't need to do that anymore break. And then it was actually the courtesy of a national newspaper that my wife saw a thing where it said, special offer, take this voucher to GmbH Smith and get a free Spitfire kit. And it was an Airfix starter set for Spitfire, the old famous Mark I Spitfire kit. My wife said, "Oh, we'll give this to the grandchildren." And I said, "No, you bloody won't. I'm having that." And I made it. And I thought, you know what? I really enjoyed that. And it was like really relaxing. So I started, I got a few other kits. And then I decided I was going to make one of everything from my father's squadron. He was in the Fleet Air Arm 800 Squadron. So I thought I'd make one of everything. I made the Seafire 47, which was his era, first of all, and then the Attacker, the Supermarine Attacker that took his era as well. 800 Squadron were the first people to take jets to sea in the Royal Navy. And then I thought I'd make one of everything else. And then I started thinking, well, maybe I should make one with the wings out and one with the wings folded. And like 40 something kits later, I managed to get through them all. And I did a blog about it online that almost no one's ever read. And then my stepson came around one day and said, "Oh, you should do YouTube videos about that." I thought, okay, then I'll do that. And that was about just under 3 years ago. And now it's my absolute full-time job. So
blogs were kind of the thing of the sort of 2010s, weren't they? It's like I have a blog. It's still there. I occasionally put stuff on. It's the same though. When you've got a YouTube channel, it's like you can do posts on that as well, which is kind of what you used to do on the blog, but more in an extended format. So it doesn't get much love, and it probably gets no views. But yeah, I mean, blogs were interesting. So how did you find it coming back then? Because that's a hell of a break.
It was astonishing when I first. I remember one of my friends having an airbrush when I was younger. No one else did, and it was like an astonishing. Oh my goodness, that's astounding! You can spray it. Wow, had never seen the like of it. And then a couple of years later, I'd stopped doing it anyway. Everything was brush painted in enamels when I was then doing them. I sound like someone saying, there's only 3 channels on the TV and it's all in black and white. No, but it was to me at that age, and with those resources, that's what modeling life was. Never made a monogram kit. They were like exceptionally exotic things. We made Airfix kits and Matchbox kits, the very occasional Revell kit, and that was pretty much it. So coming back, there's this vast range of plastic available. There's this vast range of paints and primers and fillers and all this kit that you can use. And it's astonishing. It's another world, almost another world. And I love it. I love having all this stuff to play with, you know, as long as you know what you're doing with it. It's not quite like some of these things we can get, like all the gear and no ideas sort of thing, where you can't buy your way into making good models.
No.
But there's a lot of things that make it an awful lot easier than the last time I was trying to make models.
Yeah.
You know, the fillers are much nicer. The paints, I know a lot of people use enamels still. I would never use enamels now. I use mainly acrylics after your video recently, of course. And I might use some more sort of Mr. Hobby type based things. But generally speaking, the paints are so much easier to use. And all the variety of stuff. I've got 2 different glues for photo etch. What? Who? Where? Pre-painted photo etch, for goodness sakes. Back when I was making stuff before, that just did not exist.
As you mentioned photo etch, that's quite topical. And that wasn't prompted, by the way, guys. That was completely organic. Steve has asked a question, an off-topic question. It's not off-topic. It's perfectly on topic now. I'm right now having my first hand-to-hand combat with photo. I like the way you described that hand-to-hand combat. Exactly. How did you do first time you used P in a kit? Success or disaster? Well, I can tell you the first time I used a photo etch set, like a complete set, it was a disaster. Completely. I had all the, I mean, to your point, Gary, all the gear and no idea. I kind of thought I knew what I was doing, and I didn't. And photo etch is so easy to screw up. You know, it's so easy to lose little pieces. It is the work of the devil, obviously. So you need to make your appropriate black model sacrifice before attempting any of it. The good news, I guess, is that, well, like you said, Gary, there are a lot more things now to be able to deal with it. There's a lot more awareness of kind of how to deal with it. Some of it is just still evil. I mean, if you've got a control lever, which is, you know, 1 millimeter long, even as a, you know, 20, 30-year-old with perfect vision, really good manual dexterity, you're still going to need a pair of tiny tweezers, you know, really good pair of tweezers with good like end grip. And be very careful, because tweezers are metal and super glue bonds tweezers as easily or possibly more easily than does photo etch. So it's still hard, right? There's no real way of making that easier. A lot of it comes down to experience, I think, practice. You know, like, again, as Gary said, you know, if you go for, like, you can buy all the stuff. You know, I could go out as a new modeler knowing nothing and buy an airbrush and buy all of the MIG filters and all this stuff, and I'd still make an amateurish model at the beginning because I wouldn't have the experience in using it. You know, it's like trying to start at, you know, quantum mechanics without a basic understanding of, you know, thermodynamic laws or basic, you know, school physics. You've got to build on your skills. You've got to walk before you can run. So certainly my first full experience with photo etch was a disaster. What I did beforehand, and what I tended to use though before, which was a success, was photo etch seatbelts. So I used to buy, I'm not even sure they do them anymore, I think it's Reheat photo etch seatbelts. They used to do World War II. I was into 70-second scale a lot then. World War II sets for like Luftwaffe and USN, USAF, RAF. And they would come with like 3 or 4 photo etch seats, which I think actually I've got a couple here. I used a couple on the Frog kit that I was doing, Tagger sent. Sorry, V-Strom sent, and I can't remember who sent it. Apologies, somebody sent it. And they came with like ammo belts and some sights, but mainly it was the seat belts. They came with like 8 or 10 sets of seat belts, which is perfect, right? Because no kits back in the 90s practically came with seat belts or anything approaching even an impression molded on. Occasionally, a couple of kits came with like decals, but not very good decals of them. They're usually like white and looks a bit crappy. So that's how I kind of started, and that kind of gets you used to using, because they're just little strips really. You can make them out of foil, but photo etch looks nicer. It's got the buckles and things, and that gets you used to actually using it, maybe trialing and annealing it, and that kind of stuff. Before then you graduate to the kind of full sets, which can be nightmarish. So how about you, Gary? What was your first experience with photo etch like?
Ridiculously over ambitious, I would say. I had I tracked down a 1/400th scale aircraft carrier. Again,
wow,
my dad's aircraft carrier. Right, it's the Hella Aramanche, which was the Colossus class, and Dad's ship was one of the Colossus class.
You built a Hella,
Hella
CV with photo etch.
and yeah, the what ensign even the pom poms and the 40 mils all in photo etch, and I made such a mess of a lot of it. Trying to make the crane, the rescue crane, that all came as photo, and then all the upper works, all the aerials and all that. And I think the only thing I got right were the railings, because they tacked onto the inside of the hull, because there's just a gap in the hull where the railings go, so go across the gap, so it's easy enough to tack them on the back. But learning how to tack with photo, I've never used super glue, CA glue in that sort of environment. Trying to learn how to use that and stuff, it was an absolute mess. I've got another one now, and eventually I'm going to build it properly.
But I tell myself that as well.
But it will be a labour of love, and it will take a year in the background, slowly getting all that photo etch right. Hopefully this time around. I want to learn how to do soldering on photo etch as well. I've never done that. That looks really neat.
Yeah, I've never done that. And to be honest, my desire to is minimal.
Yeah. If it weren't flat, I wasn't doing it, frankly.
Yeah, it's kind of like the mini art. What is it? The 1/35th scale Stuart, the full interior kit. It looks fabulous. I mean, hats off to mini art, what they've done there. Looks great. I have no desire to make it. I'm really looking forward to. I think actually John Alec, you'll have to ask him when he comes on. Is going to buy it and make it. I am more than happy to build it vicariously through watching one of my friends' channels do it, than do it myself. I just it's like I don't need to put myself through that pain.
No.
But it looks
a labour of love when it's done, but it will take a long time, and I may well buy 2 sets of photo etch.
So Steve, if it's your first time with photo etch, pace yourself, I would say. Certainly, tackle the stuff which is easiest first, like seat belts usually, because you can just tack them on, usually at the back of the seat or top, depends on how they fit, one place, and then you can use your hobby knife or tweezers to sort of bend them around and then tack it on with a little dab, and just work your way through, watch people on videos, and just get that experience, because a lot of modeling, to be honest, is trial and error. It is messing up, because without messing up, humans learn from negative and positive reinforcement, and negative reinforcement is much stronger than positive. Definitely. So watching a YouTube video is great. That's your positive reinforcement and demonstration. That's good. And getting it wrong and not wanting to have that experience again is an even stronger reinforcement on that. So that's why we learn from our mistakes, right?
If I were to offer one bit of advice, it would be to get high viscosity super glue, the type that cures in about 30 seconds rather than 5, because you've then got a little bit of grace to move it around. Or if it's something that's you're quite happy to leave overnight to set, then use a PVA style glue and not worry about super glue. But if you're going to use super glue and it's not something you have to instantly grab, like your control lever that's 1 mil, you want that to sit straight away, because you can't sit there for 30 seconds because your hand won't. But if it's something like an overlay on an instrument panel, a couple of tiny dabs of high viscosity super glue, you've still got enough time to move it around and get it absolutely set before it cures.
Yeah, there are also some like super glues now formulated especially for photo etch. Wow. That have a little bit of flex. What is it? It's the black. I can't remember the manufacturer now. I'm out of stock at the moment, but one of my suppliers does it. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's Deluxe Materials distribute it. Okay. But it's their black, like it's called something like black flexi for photo etch or something. And it's, I mean, super glue is inherently extremely brittle, right, just by the chemical nature of it, the cyano bonds. Very strong, but a bit like diamonds. You know, diamonds are incredibly strong, but they're not good against sharp shocks, you know, sharp impact trauma. Whereas this stuff just takes that little bit. Same with resin. Resin is usually quite fragile to shocks. It's quite brittle. A lot of manufacturers now, a lot of 3D printers. I mean, when I 3D print as well, I add a little bit of a different resin, which is a little bit flexible, which just gives it enough to still be rigid, but resist that impact shock. So that's good stuff. The other piece of advice I would give with photo etch is less is more with super glue.
Definitely.
You are almost always, when you first use it, going to put too much super glue on. That example of the 1 millimeter thing, I mean, you really want to put a dab of super glue on something. This sort of plastic, the sort of plastic that comes with everything, you know, that your decals are in or whatever. Put a dab of super glue on there and it won't cure very quickly. It won't stick to this at all. So it's air oxidation. So you put a little, but really you want to get like a spare bit of photo etch, dip it in and then sort of smear it or something. And then use that, the smear, to get, because you really need nothing to hold it. It's a millimeter long. It doesn't need holding much. You know?
Absolutely.
And super glue doesn't like plastic, so it'll try to stick everywhere else. If you've got a lot of it and it's not cured, and your tweezers touch it, or you know you touch it, or it seeps into something, it'll stick to everything else before plastic. Cyanoacrylate is also the work of the devil. So you have the two coming together there.
We go hand in hand, my friend, hand in hand.
Oh dear. Right, just looking through the comments, just making sure I'm not missing any questions, because I did see a couple. There's one here. I don't know. I think they will do. There will be more announcements from Airfix, I'm sure.
Definitely.
Before the end of the year. How exciting they are, I mean, that depends on what you want and what you're looking for. But I don't have any special knowledge of what they might be, but I'm sure they will have something, even if it's just vintage classics. But I'm sure there's something new in the mix.
Yeah, Dale's pretty much said that, because I think essentially all of the new tool announcements will be launched by the end of July.
Yeah.
So that leaves the whole of the rest of the year, which means they are definitely going to be bringing out something else.
Yeah. I think the only new tool which is slated for quite late in the year is the Eurofighter. I think that's like that's something like I think it's November.
Right.
You know, it's like their pre-Christmas thing. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a few people commenting on their returns. So Wayne returned to the hobby after 30 years. That's certainly a break and a half. Ivan, 12 when I started modeling, came up 50 years later. I think so. Absolutely, they have. On a shorter break, just before we get to Julian's question, I'm going to bring in John Alec, as he is now available. Hi, John. How you doing?
Good, Alex. How you doing, Gary? Good to see you.
Good to see you too, John. You keeping well?
I am keeping well. Thank you.
Excellent. Good to
Thanks
hear.
for having me, Alex.
No, more than welcome as always. And see, John's the reason why I didn't put the meet on for the last couple of weeks, obviously, because he's on holiday. So, so it's all his fault. So, any hate mail, John's channel is John Alex Scale Modeling. You can
Bring it.
But no. So speaking about long breaks, people also have short breaks, and you have, as I just mentioned, been on a very nice looking holiday.
Thank you.
Did you get any modeling done then, or was it a complete clean break?
No, basically in the month of May, I really didn't get any modeling done. And you know, I guess there's kind of two main reasons why we kind of take breaks from modeling. One, life, right? So you're busy, you're doing stuff you don't want to be dealing with, stuff that's just sort of normal, but it's just stuff that just kind of takes you away from the bench. And then I guess the second main reason is mojo, right? I think I've certainly lost it. You know, you're modeling kind of hardcore for a while, and then you just kind of wake up one day and you're like, oh man, I just don't feel like doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of good. It is sort of refreshing. I've just gotten back to the bench now this week after being away for, gosh, I don't know, maybe 5 weeks, 6 weeks of really not doing any modeling. And I find that when I come back from a break, like a short break, so let's just say, a week, a few weeks or whatever, I like to get into something that excites me. It may not be something people want to see, but it's something that, as a hobbyist, it excites me. It really pulls me back in, and I find that those are like stuff that I normally don't do, like sci-fi or cars or that kind of thing. Not the military, like planes and tanks, which I'm normally I'm always doing. And that's the segue. So I kind of really get back into it, and then I'll set those aside and get back, get back to the Stuka, back to the Panzer IV, that kind of thing. So I guess my take is that sometimes taking a break it can be a good thing, just to kind of cleanse your palate a little bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's true as well of individual hobbies. So even if you're not taking a break from the hobby as a whole, individual projects sometimes can get to that, let's say stale stage, where you seem to have been building it forever and it doesn't seem to have been progressing at all. I think it's always a good point at some point to just put it down, put it to one side, walk away. Don't put it away completely, because I think the danger then is that it never gets completed, right? But do something that is small or short or quick, like the Revell, like 7-pound snow speeder or TIE fighter or something, something, again, like you said, John, it's completely off piste, a Warhammer model or a figure or bust or something that's completely different, that just changes that flavor a little bit. And then, like you say, when you come back to your project, you're just like, well, I haven't got much left to do. Actually, it can be that impetus, just like, well, let's just crack on and finish this. I know I've done that with models, where you just think, why was I putting off all this time when all I got to do is, put these wheels on and put this bit on and it's done, but it just seemed like this big burden before, because it was, been going on forever. And a couple of questions here, which we'll just quickly cover. Julian Hall said, how many people came back to models during the COVID lockdowns and stuck with it afterwards? It's a really good point. I don't know it's a question we can answer directly, because I don't think we have all the figures, but I know that I can tell you, speaking with people like Dale and the other manufacturers and suppliers, when I obviously opened shop, I had all these discussions beforehand. The levels of people doing models during COVID actually went up a huge amount. We all know it's like 20% or something increase in their prior businesses. And all the companies expected it to fall off after COVID. And the news is that it didn't fall off half as much as they expected it to. So yeah,
Wow.
some people didn't have, the time because of their shift work, or, it was just a stopgap or anything. But the great majority of people that came back to modeling during COVID are actually still modeling, which,
Brilliant.
here's to the next pandemic.
Yeah.
So China, if anybody in a lab is working on, the new virus, if you give us a bit of warning next time, just allows us to prepare a bit better. But oh God, I'm definitely going to get rendered away by one side of the world at this moment, aren't they? Got the Americans.
I think everybody's figured it out by now.
Yeah, but you can figure it out, but if you just can't say it.
Yeah, right.
Well, my whole existence on YouTube is because of the pandemic. Because I was on furlough, I had nothing else to do. I made a few gardening videos to start with, and then my stepson came around and said, "Why don't you do videos about these planes you made?" And that was that, and that's what I did. When we came back off of furlough for like 3 months, was made redundant. It's like, okay, I'll do this for a living then, and I haven't really looked back. So yeah, COVID did in that respect did me quite a lot of favour. That I'd still be doing what I was doing before that, and wouldn't have the time to be enjoying this.
Yeah. I mean, COVID did me a lot of favors as well, because I was working for Thermo Fisher at the time, which we supplied all the lighthouse labs. So my team received the largest order in Thermo Fisher's history.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it was a fraction of $1 billion.
Wow!
So that tells you how.
Wow!
Yeah. Unfortunately, we didn't get the commission from that. Otherwise, I'd be living in the Caribbean.
Right.
I mean, Dorset is nice, but it's not the Caribbean.
That's true.
Thank you, Dave. That is very useful. Dave is my modeling sidekick. He's lent me the border models. Nice one for one video. VMS is the brand of super glue that does the photo-etched specific stuff.
Okay,
it's really good
I've
stuff.
used some of their varnishes. They're really nice.
Yeah,
there we
go.
Flexi 5K.
Flexi 5K. That's it. And they do a Flexi 5K black as well, which a lot of people like because you can see the difference. You can see where you put it. Oh.
Yeah,
and there it is.
Love it.
God, it's almost like we scripted this stuff.
Yeah. I got it right here.
I've got to stop writing scripts for my videos. Works better without him. Oh dear. Do any of you try experimental camo on modern application? Do you mean experimenting with camouflage on modern subjects? Or you might need to clarify that one for us, Robert, before we can answer it properly. I don't have a fully functioning pentagram, but I do have a floor safe. I'm not sure. I can that's where I can stash the satanic merchandise, the voodoo dolls. So just
scribbled on the floor.
Oh dear. So I'm just still checking the chat. I'm still behind. Apologies, everybody. But I think we are now up to date. Excellent.
Cool.
Yeah, so I mean, Jim there said as well, definitely breaks are required to keep the love for the hobby fresh. And I feel myself pushing along a project, and now it's time to step away. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one perhaps slightly different thing for us here, us three, in that sometimes we've got a video to do, and we have, admittedly, usually a self-set deadline, unless it's by arrangement with a company or something, that we want to get something out by. Sometimes you just have to power through. I had one recently with the 1/48 scale monogram B17, which was, let's say, not a pleasant build. Great kit for its time, a time that had long passed into distant history. If you wanted to spend the time really bringing it up to speed, you could. But it was a commission. I didn't charge very much because it was for a museum for the 6th of June for D-Day and stuff. So I was up till like 5 a.m. like finishing bits off on that doing
Yeah.
camo stuff. It's like, yeah, my hourly rate was probably like lower than somebody in, I don't know, Cambodia. But it was a labor of, I won't say love, but certainly charity. So,
Yeah.
so sometimes we do have to kind of do that, but it is self-imposed.
Hmm.
Phil says he's enjoying a short break from plastic kits at the moment. Bought a resin 3D printer and learning 3D software and figure painting.
Cool.
That is a cool but dark and slippery slope, Phil, I can tell you. Your ability to print, the problem with 3D printers, I find, I don't know if you find the same thing, John. Do you have a printer at all, Gary?
No, not yet. One day, maybe.
The problem with it is the ability to print things far outstrips anybody's ability to actually like paint or build the stuff that you can print. Potentially, I know certainly when I got mine, it was for D&D figures. We had an in-person game, and like my son and I would do, and you can print out dozens and dozens and dozens of figures. Painting figures actually takes quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it is no different with scale models. You can print a complete tank in an evening, but printing it, weathering it, painting it, weathering it, getting all the extras on, by which time you could have printed off 2 or 3 more. So just be aware of what you're letting yourself in for, but it's a great hobby.
I noticed that I'm a hobby and now releasing a load of aftermarket in 3D print files.
Oh really? Okay.
Yeah, for the new 1/48th Aerocobra. All of the aftermarket stuff that they would normally sell as resin themselves, they're selling as 3D files, like the weighted tires or the pre-made undercarriage links or the exhaust stacks that have got holes in them rather than blanked off like plastic does. All these extras that they would normally be selling as resin themselves, which I think they're still doing, but they're also selling them as STL files or whatever for home printing. That's
interesting. I think that's going to be an interesting model to see, what happens with that. I mean, I guess they're in an ideal position to do it, right? Because if somebody just rips all the files and sticks them on some, free to share site, like I expect most people in the chat will remember Napster from the 90s, 2000s, and the kind of death of I won't say print media, but like CDs and CD-ROMs and vinyl, which is already kind of dying out, is now coming back. Yeah. In a similar way to that, sharing sites and stuff. But interesting to see whether that will happen or whether they will, manage to protect that in some way. Whether they'll go after those that do find that, or it's too small a thing to do. I don't know. Yeah. Because obviously that's been Games Workshop's attitude with it, and of course they've got a huge legal team and are very vociferous about protecting their IP. But we're not really seeing it in this space yet, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Because, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's kind of a no-brainer for companies to do that, right? If they're already making the 3D printed resin and then using that to cast, since they're making cast copies, they have that business. But that is a much higher cost of production than just putting a digital file out there. So interesting development. I just saw there we go. Julian again. Did you see the model minutes video of an F-15 in World War II camouflage? Yes, this was part of a buddy build that we did in our Discord group, and I think Matt was the first that got his video out. To be honest, I never intended really making a video. I'm kind of going to have to now.
But, you got your live videos, right?
So, yeah, I got the live ones, but I've got to finish it now and actually make a proper video out of all of that. But I mean, it was a very relaxed buddy build. So John just has his video out that came out what, a few days ago?
Yeah, a couple of days ago, I guess.
Yeah.
I did mine in the Japanese. There's a group that's based out of Sapporo, and it's the 60th anniversary of the Kumo Eagles or whatever. So I took a basic F-15E, not the F-15J, but just an F-15E, and did it in Japanese decals, and it was fun. Yeah, just kind of a what if. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So those of you who've watched the live streams for myself, I did the Tamiya F-15. I think it's the C. It's the A. Yeah. It's one of the early ones anyway.
That's the one I did, not the E. I did the C as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because we did the same one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, we both downloaded the same 3D file from Cults to do the engines.
For the nozzles, yeah.
Yeah, because
the ones that came in that kit were.
Yeah, I mean, the Tamiya kit is quite old. It's like 76 or something. 77.
It's old, yeah.
But it's really nice. I mean, you can tell why Tamiya got its name at the time. Thinking that monogram B-17 was about the same time, give or take. I mean, it's light years ahead, absolutely light years ahead. Because that monogram one is all raised panel lines, very clunky detail. The Tamiya kit, I mean, it stands up. The actual bodywork of the thing stands up today. Some of the fit, some of the engineering choices that they made, maybe not so, but it builds up to a really nice kit. But yeah, the nozzles, but they were what, $10 or something to download those
at most. Yeah.
It
was worth
it. Because they were actually 72nd scale, weren't they? And we just scaled them up.
Yeah, you're right. Because I printed them out and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I've got to scale these up to 1/48, and yeah, you're right.
But that's the beauty of a 3D file, is that they're made for 1/72nd, but you can scale those. So if you really want to do a 1/144 scale, eagle, and do the cans with those tiny little things, you could, provided you had a printer that could get the resolution. And my God, that would be fragile. Or if you've got a 1/32nd scale, you could scale them up, and you can print as many copies as you want, So if you really F it up, it doesn't matter so much, because the actual prints are cents, pennies. So yeah, do go check out Matt's video. So he actually has all the channels that are in the buddy build linked. So just watch those channels if you're not already subscribed. It'd be great if you guys could go and subscribe to them, wait for those videos to come out and see who we've done. And then, judge us. You think did a better job. But yeah, John's is up now, so I know how much I have to put in to beat him. So. He can't change his now, you see.
No,
that's why
I can't.
waited.
It's done. It's set in stone, man.
Now my plan comes in. Oh dear. Oh, here's an interesting question. Do airbrushes need lubricating? Well, I've never lubricated any of mine. Let's put it that way. I've had my Badger for, since I came back in 95-ish. So that's like 30 years. It gets lubricated with paint, cleaning fluid, when it gets washed. That's about it. So I don't know. Do you guys lubricate your airbrushes?
The only time is if I've done a really, really big strip down total clean. It's just if it's one that's got a stem of the valve that you press up and down, I'll put a bit of grease on that. But that's about it. It's like a silicone grease just on that stem.
Where it meets.
On the actual pressure valve thing. The rest of the mechanism, absolutely not. No, I don't want it going anywhere near the paint or getting any of the thinners or anything else picking up anything out that it shouldn't be. But it's just the barrel of the valve itself that I put a touch of silicone grease on.
Exactly the same, Gary. I do exactly the same. Yeah.
So there we go, Mark. Feel free to abuse your brush as much as you like.
Sort of trigger stem or whatever it's called. Yeah.
Okay, Robert, thank you for rephrasing. Do you consider different camo schemes pick up from the late war schemes to modern appellation of today's jet and tanks? Still not quite sure what the question is.
Pick up from the late war schemes to modern, maybe application of today's jet and tanks. So I don't know, maybe using a late war schemes.
Oh, right.
modern
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's these. This is a raspberry mojito. They're not that strong, but obviously I don't really drink, so maybe it's gone to my head. Apologies for being a bit slow on the uptake there.
In a minute.
After the first dozen, it'll do that to you, man.
It's the first one, I promise. Maria's away. It doesn't matter. I'm not on a promise or anything.
Uh-huh.
So going to the question, yeah, I have done. I've messed around with stuff like that before. I think it's quite fun. You know, I think it goes back to that thing where some people get very the phrase from where I grew up would be het up, but you know, really anxious, really kind of worked up and angry if you're doing something that isn't historically accurate, right?
Yeah.
For those people, I would suggest going to Nunu's channel, Plastic Alchemist, where he's done some great builds of like pink aircraft and things. You know, sometimes I think you can see a modern vehicle and you think, you know, that would look really good in whatever it's like, you know, World War II German camouflage, or you see an aircraft. In fact, I'm doing a Eurofighter. I haven't. It was one of those things I asked the channel about. They gave me an answer, and I haven't got round to fitting into the schedule at the moment. So I'm doing a Eurofighter, German Eurofighter, in a World War I scheme.
Oh, excellent!
So one of the World War I aces. I can't remember the guy, but it's red, like red and white stripes across. Okay. You know, ridiculously bright. Yeah. I mean, and you do see them. The thing is, people complain about that, but we have the RAF Typhoon that they did in early war camouflage scheme. You know, we have celebration jets all the time, you know, with Tiger schemes and 50th anniversary, 60th anniversary things. So I think absolutely. Yeah. What about you guys? Have you done or would you do such a heresy?
Yeah. And in fact, I've now that you've mentioned that, I've just been thinking, I've got a Tornado kit up there, and I just recently got a set of World War II Italian paints. You know, like the greens and the browns. And now I'm starting to think the Tornado would look pretty cool in that mottled camouflage, that green and brown over sand mottled camouflage with the white. What do they call the fascia markings? You know, the white with the 3 black lines on the way. I think that would look actually pretty damn cool, and I'm so tempted to start doing that now.
Do you know, you just given me a bit of inspiration there, Gary? Because
why not?
I've got so Sully from Sully's Scale Models again. I go check his channel out. He did a TSR2 in Swedish, the forest camo.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
looks amazing.
Swedish ride.
Yeah, in the splinter camouflage.
Yeah, and I have one as well. And I was saying, well, I have to find something like even more exotic now. In World War II camo, because they did a lot of different 3-color models, didn't they? The Italians, they had some beautiful schemes.
Hundreds of different types. Yeah.
So I'm thinking now, maybe I found the maybe a bit of a mix, like a modern set of round balls with the old World War II camo.
Absolutely.
Yeah. May have got it, Sully.
Yeah. Why not? I mean, I've done enough of these. You know, there's enough of these kits of World War II German planes that never left the drawing board, let alone actually fly. And I'll happily build those, but then I'll think, you know, I'll do them in captured colours and put the old yellow circle with a P in it and put an RAF serial on it and just have fun. it's strange thing about this is it is actually supposed to be fun.
Yeah,
It
I think that is it, isn't it? A lot of people
You
forget.
know, and I don't think you should be sort of talked down to anyone who's having fun exploring things just because it's not historically accurate. Well, sometimes history isn't that accurate, to be perfectly honest. So let people just enjoy what they want to do.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I've actually got a video coming out. It'll be Saturday, because provided I can not fall behind with my editing, it's kind of 95% there. But it's on paint.
Okay.
Another one on paint, but this is talking about, and it's alluding to what we talked about on Airfix and Chill on Monday about and I mentioned this actually, that is what manufacturers tell you. It's just like Airfix will tell you it's like, what is it? 91 is their RAF Sky, or it's like,
Right.
they call it something
Oh,
like
right,
RAF Beige Green or something.
Yeah.
So I've done a Spitfire, the Mark 1 Spitfire from Airfix, just in stripes. I haven't like done it camo or anything, but from Humbrol, Revell, Tamiya, and ICM, using their recommendations, what they say to do as those three colors. And there are 4 completely different colors. Well, there's 12 completely different colors. And it's like, well, which one is right? And well, actually, none of them is right. It's like they're all compromises. And just, I mean, the whole clickbaity kind of title is, stop painting by numbers, because that's kind of what manufacturers are doing, right? They give you, very simplified, but paint by numbers thing, and then say, all numbers do it. So I talk about like freeing yourself from that and actually, trying to think about it yourself, about what color it actually is or what you want to do. So more of observation and recreation, which is how artists are taught to actually do things. You look at what you see, not what you presume, not what your brain thinks. It's not like, oh yeah, the tree is brown, so I get a brown. You're actually going to look at the tree. Is it actually brown? Look at the shade that is, and how it changes, all that kind of stuff. So I think people get very, again, historically accurate. It's like, well,
I get very dug in.
Yeah, it's like, at what time? At what time of day was that that you're represented? What time are we looking at it? Is this at noon on a clear day? Is it overcast? Is it sunset? Is it dawn? Because that's going to look different in all of those conditions. You could get into lots of those kinds of things, but people get very pedantic. It's like, no, just free yourself from that and trying to experiment a little bit. Actually, you'll learn some things. You'll learn some things about like looking at stuff, about painting, about trying stuff. And sometimes you'll mess up. And sometimes it'll look awful. But that's, again, how you learn. And the next time you do it, you'll learn something from that. You'll do it better. And, again, it's modeling is a journey. And if you're not having fun with that, you can always go back and just paint by numbers. You can just say, okay, I'll do it what the manufacturers have chosen, or I'll go to my chosen paint range and I'll choose that, and I'll just, no criticism of that. It's just, what do you want to do? This hobby is yours. It's your hobby. We say modeling, that's a huge broad term. It's like saying, do you enjoy driving? It's like, well, what do you mean? Do I enjoy driving to work? Do I enjoy long country drives? Do I enjoy driving in the Alps or on a circuit in my car, somebody else's car, a supercar? There's 100,000 different variations. So
totally.
Oh, 5 gifts. Dave has gifted 5 Men's Model Moments. I can't even say my own channel's name. Men's Model Moments memberships.
That mojito.
Very nice.
Dave, thank you very much. And I don't know how the memberships work. Apparently 5 random people get them. But so if you get them and you don't know what that means, go to the channel, have a look at there's a members post. I think it's on the community page, which gives you the Discord server details. You can go there, drop into the server, have a chat with us. If you've got any questions, you've got something you want to ask me, all that stuff's there. Right, I've lost my place now. What about so Julian? This is exactly what I kind of did. So I took 4 World War I German aces, the 4 top scoring German aces. that didn't have lozenge camouflage because I didn't want to do that on a model. So I could kind of duck the.
Oh, shame on you! Shame.
Well, most of the top aces actually painted over their lozenge stuff because they didn't like it, so it's kind of
Makes
okay.
sense.
But yeah, that's kind of.
It would look cool though. Eurofighter in lozenge.
It would.
Would
Oh
look
my
so cool.
God, I would do that in decals.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, actually, so I've got I don't know what it is. It's some mark of albatross, I think, and it's a Revell kit, and they supply you with decal, which is just the hex, just the lozenges, like the extended hexes, in black and white to go over, and then you paint in the individual bits.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, that would be good. And this is when I think it's even done in enamels. What a ball ache!
Wow.
God, never again.
Yeah.
Terrible. And World War I aircraft, right? Again, I salute anyone out there whose chosen specialized subject is World War I aircraft. There's a guy who's a channel member who's into them. 172nd World War I aircraft. They're tiny. They're so small.
That's crazy.
They are.
All that rigging and stuff, man.
Oh man. That's It's again, guys, the hobby's supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Build a Hurricane in wraparound camo and louvers roundels.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yes, to do it the other way around, to do classic aircraft in more contemporary schemes. Really, very cool.
Actually, I was going to do that with something. I can't remember what it was. I had a kit, one of those kits that kind of, you take something out of it, like decals or something, for something else. And then you got this kit and you think, what am I going to do with this? And I was going to do that with it. And I can't remember even what it was. But the problem I have is that I get a lot of ideas for videos. And the thing is, if I did them all, I've got enough video material to go to about 2038. Putting out a video a day, I think. But
yeah.
That is a very, very true statement, Models by Shaky. Everyone needs to remember that a model needs only to please yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
We
Unless you
please others, but yeah, it's really our hobby. I mean,
unless you go into that murky world of competitions, in which case,
correct. Absolutely. That's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
Deserve everything you get, frankly, really.
Wow, I'm working on a 135th Bradley in a forest environment using a base green and hex pattern of different colors. Wow. That sounds challenging. It sounds cool. Hex camo works really well on modern stuff. It looks very futuristic. It's kind of it's very sci-fi trope, isn't it, to have kind of hex camo and stuff. What about a modern aircraft done with World Warship dazzle camo? There are actually, I think, again, Gary, some of the World War One camos, some of the aces were quite dazzle, like black and white, weren't they?
Totally, absolutely. It's designed to disorient, so you can't tell which direction it is, what way round it is, whether it's diving or it's because you just get that fraction of a second of vision on your enemy, and it's to try and give as little information away as possible in that fraction of a second, and making them as bright as possible and contrasting in the wrong directions. It's the same thing as face camouflage in the military. It's there to break up that psychologically familiar shape into something that's completely unfamiliar, so you don't recognize it, and that's what it's all about. It's brilliant. I'm sure they've done trials on that stuff in the past as well.
Oh God, yeah. The amount of dazzle stuff that's been tried in various different things on ships and it's tried on armor. So one of the things with armor is they try to avoid straight lines because straight lines in nature are very unnatural in kind of forest environments and stuff. Which is why when the Germans eventually got to their kind of end of war stuff, that was kind of seen as the leading stuff because it was so good, that dapple camouflage. was great for, the Ardennes and, that late fall kind of, the leaves coming. You got that mixture of green and brown, yellow of the leaves, like light coming through the trees. That's why it's so effective. That's why it's called ambush camo. That's what it was for.
Yeah.
And most camo. There was a comment on another YouTuber's channel. I won't mention it to not have people go and look it up and embarrass the poster. But they were talking about Kettenklad, or Kettenklad Rafklad, or whatever it's called. The little half-track motor bike thing the Germans used, and about how the wheels were never camouflaged. Because moving wheels, would disrupt. And it's like, that's just, well, first, it's not true because there are historical photos of them. It's like, there's probably about a 3-to-1 ratio of unpainted ones, because most of the ones that are in photos from the time were propaganda shots, which were when they were all done in grey, Panzer grey at the beginning of the war, and not in field camo. But the point of camo is to, disrupt that for vehicles, that is, AFVs, is really to disrupt it when it's stationary. When it's moving, it's kicking up so much crap and they're so noisy. Camouflage might help you with, a lazy gunner or something, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
But generally, a little bit of paint on something the size of a Kettenklad is not going to make any difference.
No.
And the tracks, I mean, those tracks are moving and that thing is spitting out, petrol exhaust. And
that's one of those kind of theory arguments. It's just like, in theory, that kind of sounds right until you actually think about it. And then you realize it's rubbish. But yeah, the dazzle stuff. I mean, the British Contour, I can never say it properly. The early British camo for the desert, where they had the three, that was all kind of triangular, pattern stuff. Was it? I'm going to sneeze. Sorry. Hay fever, terrible thing.
I know.
It'll come at an unexpected time.
Also, there's things like the formation planes towards the end of the war. The Americans had those incredibly painted liberators and stuff to formate on these massive wings of bombers. That those look like a lot of fun to do.
The great big like the black front with yellow dots and like pink
absolutely
like
but when you've got like 1,000 other planes in the sky over Suffolk, all trying to figure out who they're supposed to be following, it's cool to be able to see this one thing at a bit of a distance. Oh, you look for the thing that's like pink with yellow dots and big black stripes down the side. Okay, I can see that.
I mean, I think anybody,
right? There's the ice cream. Yeah, let's follow it. Exactly.
You're not going to follow the wrong thing, are you?
Yeah.
But, I mean, those formations. If anybody here is interested in that kind of history, people think about it. Oh, couldn't they have just done this and couldn't they have just that? The bomber raids at the end of the war, there were so many aircraft. Actually, collisions with other aircraft were more common than you imagine, and actually kind of for a fair number of casualties. But trying to get even like 100 aircraft, right, is a fair number. And they had that kind of numbers going off quite a lot. 100 aircraft. It took one B-17 about an hour to get to 25,000 feet. To get to cruising. That's just to get to altitude.
Yeah.
And you've got to think, you've got to take off all of these aircraft, which weren't particularly fast. They've got to go in some sort of holding pattern to get to where they're going whilst trying to climb. And they're all doing this in the same kind of relative airspace, to then get to a particular point to all form up, on this. I mean, before you even start, I mean, I get bored when they get put in a holding pattern at Heathrow for 15 minutes when you're going back from, wherever. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine doing that for an hour and a bit before you, this is before you then get, the 3 hours to Berlin where people are going to try and kill you.
Yeah. And you've got to climb through cloud quite often as well.
Yep.
And it's just insane. Absolutely insane.
Nothing really approaching a radar.
Yeah.
With somebody on the radio who tells you kind of things if you're lucky. Yeah. It's incredible, really. Right, not really. So, but yeah, modern aircraft done with sort of that dazzle camo definitely be quite cool. I think that's one of actually the big drawbacks, I would say, about, and a lot of people say this about modern aircraft, they're mostly grey.
Mm.
You know, it is a sea of grey.
Mm.
There are ways to make that interesting, and if you actually look at real aircraft, they do sometimes weather in interesting ways that makes them, you know, a bit more. Well, from a modelling point of view, if you're just thinking about it purely from the artistry, if you like,
Yeah.
that can be quite interesting and engaging. But at the end of the day, you know, I appreciate if you're making 10 modern aircraft and they're all variations within a bit of the same sort of grey, because that is the grey that has the lowest impact on our eyes.
Mm.
You know, that's biology, so they're all going to kind of be the same. I get that, but why people might want to be like, can we do it in something different?
Mm.
But if you feel that way, just do it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
That would be quite good, actually. Thai and X-Wings as Battle of Britain.
I think I've seen one of those. Maybe it's Telford or something like that. It was like supposed to be like over the coast. So one was following the other over water and a bit of a cliff behind it. It looked so cool. It looked so good.
The White Cliffs of Dover.
That would be a cool visual. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thing is, with a TIE fighter, it doesn't really have a body, does it? It's kind of,
No.
It's just a top cockpit between two wings. It's like the TIE Interceptor, I guess, would be a bit more of a direct equivalent. At least
it's a ball with two.
Yeah, at least you got two kind of like longer
on the
wings.
side.
Yeah. I'm now behind with messages, so.
Oh,
Currently painting a C202 Fulgore with starboard wing painted in smoke ring pattern, the rest painted in another scheme. Oh, okay.
Oh.
Interesting. I wonder if that was that because it was painted that way, or did they salvage the wing from something else?
no.
I guess either would be possible, World War II, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's the thing. I've seen it actually on quite a few 109s, because, of course, the fuselage was manufactured separately to the wings, and they're often transported that way. It's one of the reasons, actually, they went for the narrow carriage the narrow track undercarriage, because that just fixed to the fuselage. So the fuselage could be manufactured, the wings could be done separately, and they could all be married together. So sometimes they did replace, you know, any damaged sections with just bits from another plane that had been written off for another reason, you know, or damaged or whatever. Don't think they do that now. Although, I mean, things like Typhoons, aren't the port and the starboard wing made in different countries?
Probably. Yeah.
I think the Italians make one and we make the other. I can't remember, but
yeah. What could go wrong, eh?
well, unfortunately, we all use the metric system, so it's not like the Mars mission, which
Exactly. That's exactly where my mind went.
Or space station. Yeah.
can you imagine? You cover the port wing is like 50% bigger. You could model it, 48 scale wing on 72nd scale aircraft.
Yeah.
Why we haven't moved to the metric system? Man, I don't know. It's the States, you know.
Well, I mean, we say that, but we still use miles per hour,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we still use miles for distance.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
You still use stone weight?
yeah.
In common in discussion. So if you talk about someone in stone weight, they'll get it.
I would say like our generation, Gen X, yes. Millennials onwards, it's kilos. They didn't learn stone. So yeah, because pounds as a weighted measurement became an optional kind of before they were born, or just around that time. So everything was in kilos, and obviously they're educated in kilos, so they've never learned that piece. Only from us, you know, old fogies that still use it, you know. So whilst they might be familiar with some of that kind of contextually, not in a kind of educated sense. Same way with measurements, they're all metric. Whereas because my parents, well, technically I lived through decimalization, but barely. But because they lived through it. They were all pounds, shillings, and pence. I never learned the currency, but I'm able to use imperial measurements, and our rulers still have inches on them. So
Interesting.
But
Yeah.
I mean, at least we don't do Fahrenheit,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Temperature.
forget it. We're I heard you before. Yeah, we are behind you. Here in the States, I think John's a little bit behind us. Yeah. We are.
I think the most ironic thing about the States is that you cling on to these imperial measurements.
Yeah.
Imperial. You spent a lot of time and energy getting rid of the imperium and the king's rule, and yet you keep the measurements. It's like, I would have thought, you'd want to throw off the shackles of that and take something from the Système International, which is French, your brothers of liberty in republicanism. But no, we'll cling to the old king's standard, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we went from 2% tax now to 40% tax, and we're still, oh yeah, fine.
Oh yeah, that temporary measure of income tax. Yeah.
There's the dog. She's come to wagging her tail. Oh, my sweetie.
Going back to that thing about the wings. Do you remember the tale of the is it a DC-3 somewhere out in the Far East that had a problem with the wings? So they grafted on a DC-2 wing, and it flew. They call it a DC-2.5 just to get it out. Maybe I was in China or something like that. Someone will know. Who's watching will know the answer to this, but I'm sure it's a DC-3, and the only wing they had available was a DC-2 once, but it bolted on and it flew, and it got them back to wherever they needed to actually fix it properly. So,
Sorry,
yeah.
I tried to breathe cocktail when you said that. Came exactly the wrong time.
Yeah. It does say on the packet, do not try and snort this product.
Yeah, I just read that. Yeah, it does say serving suggestion in a glass or from, not inhaling. Oh, dear. I did have a question about Hermann Goering. What he weighed in stone. It was a lot. He was a big old guy at the end. Well, not right at the end, obviously.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But yeah. Body positivity, an early example. There we go. Germany ahead of the curve as always.
He had to have been 350, 400 pounds or something.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, he was a large dude.
Mm-hmm.
It's ironic because he was a fighter ace, right, in World War One.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just like you wouldn't have fit in the fighter in World War Two.
Kind of let himself go a bit, I think, in the interwar years.
Yeah. It's like, how do I not get drafted this time? It's just like, Hans, pass me the schnitzel.
Put it on.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. I didn't know that. Kettenklads were put back into manufacture until 1948 for use in farming.
Oh, wow.
I get that, though. It's quite a nifty little thing.
Mm-hmm.
With the tracks there, ideal for Jeremy Clarkson should get one. Imagine that on Clarkson's farm.
Yeah, as long as you can put a V8 into it or something.
I'm sure he'd find a way.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. Some of the camera patterns used by the US Navy pre-war were really interesting to model. So I'm quite a fan of the old three-tone, like the early war US Navy camo. On Corsairs and stuff, the early Corsairs and things that
Light gray,
intermediate blue, white. Yeah, it's really nice. And then when you get to the overall sort of sea blue, it's kind of like a bit. Although again, the way to have interest there is to do some of those on those Pacific Islands where they just got weathered to absolute hell.
Yeah. Or even some of that silver wing stuff, like so you have like a whole wing in yellow and a blue tail and the body in polished metal. They look so much cool. Doing an F-15 in that kind of thing could be pretty groovy.
Well, even the Airfix Bristol Bulldog, which was released recently.
Yeah.
It's got. One of the big advantages of that kit is has some gorgeous schemes. I mean, for me, if I was going to do one, I think I'd do the one with the jagged line down it, and
Oh, right.
there's the other one with the green panels. And
Yeah.
but I mean, the interwar years, they did kind of it was that the whole silver wings thing, that polished silver look of the metal, or the silvered fabric, and then whatever colors you fancy.
Yeah.
And a lot of them did look cool. I wish Airfix hadn't done the Bulldog, but they'd done the Hawker Heart or like the Demon or something, because they look really cool. I mean, they look like racing aircraft, didn't they? They were.
I've already told them that they have to do some of those family, because no one makes a 148th Hawker Osprey naval bomber, and I want to do that project I mentioned about doing my dad's squadron history. I want to do that in 148th now, and that's the one plane that's no one's done or planning to do. So I told Dale, you just have to get your act together, man. And obviously Airfix make their kits entirely at my discretion, naturally. So I said, Dale, you've got to do this, man. No one else makes one. It could be part of a family of that Hawker range. There'd be some minor modifications between them, but that's what they do these days. They make a kit. They've done the Liberator, and there's going to be 3 or 4 more different versions of the Liberator before they hang up the molds, no doubt. So yeah, things like the Fury that you can then turn into the Hawker Nimrod naval plane and things like that. I was just saying to him, interwar biplanes, they look cool as well. I love them. That Bulldog looks gorgeous. I haven't built it yet, but the parts look nice.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I said on my review of it, and if anybody in the chat is thinking of getting one or has one, it's an asymmetric windscreen. Airfix probably should have mentioned that a bit more in the instructions than they did.
Oh, so it's not the short shot. That was the discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a short shot. It is meant to be that way. I thought exactly the same thing when I first opened mine, and it was I think it was James on the Discord that said no. Actually, they had asymmetric windscreens. The most of the Mark IIs, and again, the only thing I think is odd with that is they didn't include the Douglas Bader aircraft, which I know is a 2A, but up until 1933 they looked identical. The only difference was the Jupiter engine had like 50 horsepower more output, so slight difference on the oil coolers. But the tail skid wasn't replaced with the tail wheel. The tail wasn't enlarged, and they did another little bit, which I can't remember. That wasn't done until 1933. And Douglas Bader had his accident in 31, so you could have easily done that. And there were more Mark II A's than there were 2s. So, but
just that in the frame layout, the cylinders for the engine are on their own frame. Yes. So you could have very slightly different cylinders. You know what these guys are like these days. They would have researched the hell out of that, and those cylinder tops are going to be different on the slightly more powerful Jupiter engine, so they can have an extra frame to replace those cylinder heads, and that will be at a 2A, and they'll be happy. It really wouldn't surprise me. But also maybe it makes sense in terms of selling a second release of a kit, that you don't do the really, really famous one straight out. You do one that's the standard one, and then you can say, this was Douglas Bader's one, and then sell it on the basis of that, maybe.
I thought that.
Markings.
But I've been in commercial sales for 30 years, and that's a stupid idea.
Oh, yeah, sure it is.
You want to maximize your first release of the kit, because if they don't get the sales that they really need to out of it, there won't be a second release. So, not with any modified parts. But I mean, if you did want to do Bader's aircraft, it's not a big modification you need to do. Don't think out there that you need to replace the tail and all that sort of stuff. You don't. In fact, if you do, it will be wrong. So, research, as always, is key.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's not too onerous. So they didn't have the, they got the little don't know what they are, the little shrouds on the back of the Jupiter engine. The 2As didn't bother with those, but then some of the 2s didn't. I think 2 out of the 3 schemes in Airfix's one don't have those on.
Yeah.
Some people also cite the prop spinner as not being on the 2, sorry, the 2A, but it wasn't 2. That's also not true. Actually, a lot of pilots removed the spinner hub from the front of the prop because it was known as being nose heavy, so they thought they might save a bit of weight there. So it's just, I think it became more standard that people did that, so they just stopped making it.
Yeah.
Well, if you're not going to use it, we won't put it on. It's like, that's fine, we don't want it.
Yeah.
Sorry about
yeah,
that.
it'd be interesting to see how the Bulldog does. I mean, it was a bit of an odd one for me. I think it's a nice aircraft, but I just don't know. For me, it's a gamble, right? I hope it does well for them because I want Airfix to be successful. I think they do some really good stuff. They do some stupid things, but hopefully they're doing enough good stuff to sustain them through the silly stuff, and that they get enough good things. And interwar aircraft have been very neglected, but that does make it a bit of a gamble because they've been neglected because most people don't do them. So I would say if you've never tried a biplane, this is probably a good one to try because you don't have to rig it. There's nothing that says that. The rigging instructions in the Airfix kit are really good. So if you're going to start and you want to rig something, the Airfix kit is a really good start to it because it's very, very clear. 4 pages of instructions. They only have 7 to putting it together, and then another 4 rigging it. So, it would be a good
also like that they've done the anchor points for the rigging in the right places. And there is a noticeable dent there. So if you're rigging it with a bit of solid wire rather than easy line or whatever, you can actually sort of sit it in the slot properly, and it will stay there whilst you're gluing it in place. And it's a nice little thought processes have gone on there.
I wonder as well if some of that is for the aftermarket guys, so that if you're doing because a lot of those things had little anchor points, which would be ideal in photo-etched. You can imagine like Edward doing a little folding thing with just
those sort of turnbuckles and stuff.
It goes there. So which I think is great, right? I think working with, and Airfix has said, they're not going to do that sort of stuff because the aftermarket can get there. So if they can work with those guys to make it easy for them, that helps them sell kits. So I think that's a smart move. There's a comment here. Well, those oddball German tanks that have a Panzer IV turret combined with a Panther hull. ICM have just released that. That's my video out. It's out on that tomorrow, 7:30. So,
Nice.
I actually built it straight away. I'm spraying it as we speak. I literally did the review on it and then started building it because I'm quite excited about that. It doesn't have rubber band tracks, which is good.
Oh, cool.
Unfortunately, they're individual link, but you can't have it all. But that is because the base Panther kit is from 2005. It's the Panzer Aus D, which actually looks really nice. The fit overall is really good. There are 2 pieces in particular. They don't fit. You need quite a lot of trimming. I was like, what's going on here? But it's quite easy to do. So Goering took over command of Richthofen's flying circus after the Red Baron's death.
Wow.
And apparently, he weighed 280 pounds when he was caught.
Wow.
20 stone. Wow.
Dear God.
That's a big boy.
Yeah.
How long was it before he, through all the trials and stuff? That went on for quite a while, didn't it?
Yeah, he was in prison for was it a year or something? He befriended actually one of the one of the soldiers that was protecting him, and I think the most commonly accepted theory is that's the soldier that brought him the cyanide or the poison that he used. He charmed this young fellow, and not like that, but he
Well, you know, he's
okay. So, but
like his dresses.
he brought him the theory is he's the guy that brought him the poison and let him kill himself before. Yeah.
Early instance of woke culture, John.
Yeah.
You know, trying to identify as a woman to avoid prison. It's like, he's still a Nazi.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm hitting all the trigger points tonight, aren't I?
Yeah.
Goering was on drugs a lot of the time. Actually, a lot of the actually, use of drugs for combat wasn't that uncommon in World War II. You know, stimulants. It was a drug-fueled fight.
Yeah, he had some addiction challenges, let's say.
Yeah, challenge for everybody else around him, I imagine.
Yeah.
Oh dear. John Parker, welcome. Oops.
Yeah, he's been in for a while. So
I didn't spot you before, John. Apologies.
See, John.
Hawker Heart from Airfix, retooled into the Demon. Which means that so unfortunately, when old things, John, you can probably confirm this, whether it's true or not. Usually, when Airfix retooled stuff and the old things, they physically altered the mold because that's what you did back then. So basically, you destroy your chances of ever making the original thing. So no more Hawker Heart from Airfix. I think I've got a Revell heart. I think it's the Revell, or is it the Demon? I'm pretty sure it's a Hawker Heart. It was one that came in a job lot of second-hand kits for the shop, which I, obviously go through and just like, no, I'm having that one.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh, I haven't done one of those like that. So an interwall display on last year's model show. Beautiful 5-star races and airliners from the 20s and 30s. Interesting. Yeah, it's a really interesting time. So originally, when I did the Vintage Wings Challenge last year, I was going to do it up until like from the beginning of aviation to the start of World War II. But it's just too massive a period. So I thought I'll just do World War One, and then I would do a Silver Wings like challenge at a later time. Because for the Silver Wings stuff, I think I looked through, and there were over 1,000 different types of aircraft during that period that would qualify. And it's just like an astonishing amount, because the innovation that was going through that flight. I mean, if you think of what was at the end of World War One, I mean, there were some monoplanes, but compare that with, where you were at the beginning of World War II with like things like the Hurricane and the Spitfire. And obviously the 109 through the 30s, late 30s, the Spanish Civil War. Massive technological difference, between those. And I mean, you just have to look at the progression of the bomber. Some of these monstrosities that came out. I mean, there were some monstrosities in World War II as well. Russia, we're looking at you. So those huge things that they made, good God. But yeah, it's a really interesting period. It really varied. But yeah, some of them, they made like 20 of. It's like, we make this, but okay, we've changed now. We're making this. It's like, oh, okay.
And it's only 20 years. That was the thing. It's just 20 years ago. You look at these like advancements in aviation since 2003, and you think, well, I still fly on the same airliners pretty much, with the same kind of propulsion pretty much. Military planes are pretty much the same because you can't afford to buy them that often. The difference between 1919 and 1939, it was like a totally different technology. It was just a totally different world.
I mean, even if you look over the period of the First World War, from 1914 to 1914, I mean, aircraft weren't being used regularly at the beginning of the war. I mean, the RFC didn't see the point in aircraft to start with. It was, no, we've got balloons, for wrecking and stuff. Had to be convinced about, using them. To the end of World War II, I mean, it's World War One. And you look at the numbers of production of some of the aircraft, thousands of them. And you think, but this was only made for like a year, and it's like they churned out like 1,500 of them. It's just like, good God. I mean, you think that production numbers are big in World War II, but considering it's such a short period of time and a much smaller area, really, because we don't have, okay, you had Imperial Russia, but that was very different from the Soviet Union, and you didn't really have the US, manufacturing behemoth involved. So it's much smaller empires. It's quite astonishing.
But also a lot more handcrafted in a way. There's no sort of steel pressings or aluminium pressings. It was like piano makers and cabinet makers were drafted in to do this stuff. It's incredible how handmade they were.
Whereas now you think nothing happens without a computer.
No.
Because the tolerances on things, CNC is critical for stuff, because in a lot of cases, fractions of a millimeter make the difference between a panel working and not working. But if we dare mention Boeing again, case in point, right?
Yep.
Oops.
Yeah. I mean, the Germans were amazed when they would see or capture, I think it was airplanes, and I can't remember if it was British or American. And they were just absolutely amazed that we could produce engines that didn't just hemorrhage oil. I remember reading that somewhere, maybe Rex's Hangar. I love his channel, Rex's Hangar, and because he always talking about airplanes. So yeah, it was airplanes, and it's like the Germans were just amazed that either the British or the Americans were making aero engines that,
I think it's really interesting. Yeah, really interesting when you get any conflict, that conflict always accelerates technology, because you're always trying to get that edge, I mean, incredible innovations made over the course of World War II, the invention of the computer, basically, so many things that have so much impact over such a small period of time, really, and how different things were from 1939 to 1945. It is astonishing, really, when you look at some of these things.
Well,
in a world where today, it's all pretty much, it's almost like, the innovation slows down.
Yeah. Well, in those days also, just handing out blank checks. It's just like, make it happen. Don't care how much it costs. Make it happen,
Well, and also just, you've got a contract based on a drawing.
Yeah.
We think we can make this, and we think it'll be really fast. Okay. Make a couple of hundred for us.
Yeah, you're right. Back then, they had to make basically a prototype, right? They had to actually kind of see it first. And,
And now you have these big competitions between, rival companies that come up with these incredible. I mean, the YF-23, incredible aircraft. I mean, the F-22 as well, that beat it. And the F-23 in some ways is superior. It's got better stealth, but they went for the maneuverability of the F-22 and, other things. Politics comes into it a lot more these days. You have the luxury of time, whereas obviously in Ukraine at the moment, they don't have the luxury of time, and they're bolting, anything they can to anything else. And you have these Frankenstein things, but they work. That's good enough. It doesn't have to go through a contract. Can it blow shit up? Yes, it can. Then, you're good to go.
Yeah.
I mean, it is astonishing, though, that now we have the progression of technology. It's like stealth aircraft, essentially, because both sides now have stealth. You neutralize each other's, beyond range visual missiles, beyond visual range missiles, radar guided missiles. Very easy to break lock in a stealth aircraft if you can get a lock to start with. So that means you're closing to dogfights with IR missiles. You've got lower IR signatures, better countermeasures and stuff. So you're back to, can you see it with your eyes? And can you shoot it down with a gun? It's like, we're back to World War II. This technology neutralizes each other. It's like, mad. Apologies, chat. I am not keeping an eye. I have been rambling and not keeping an eye. I think, though, we haven't had too many questions. I think I've caught most of them. If I've missed anything, guys, put it now in the chat because I'm now up to date. Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing I think the Ukraine has taught us, it is the age of AI, of drones.
Yeah.
People really now, in terms of fighting, it's people fighting people. The technology now is really fighting the technology.
Yeah.
You know, the age of the main battle tank is kind of gone, I think, until you get the next new innovation, of course. Because I mean, Russia are using World War One, World War Two, early World War Two tactics of just the meat grinder. Ukraine are looking at obviously clever ways to do it. Russia are trying to counter that with welding sheds to tanks. It's very sad because ultimately, young men are dying for very little reason.
Yeah.
But it has shown, technology really has evolved to that point where drones are doing most of the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Recently, it was reported an Su-57 was destroyed in Russia by drone strikes on the ground.
Wow.
So it doesn't matter how good your stealth technology is, if you're parked on the ground and a drone can find it, it's kind of your several $100 million aircraft has gone to a few $1,000, $10,000 drone. It's like economics of war. I mean, really, World War II wasn't won by Russia or Britain or America working together because we had great tanks and stuff. It was because of economics. We had more. We had the might of America's corporate machine. We had the massive Soviet Union kind of steamroller. And Germany didn't have the capacity. So,
we had oil, right? The Allies had oil.
Yeah. I mean, that's what the march through Russia was all about, was about securing oil for the Reich. Unfortunately, it didn't get there. Well, unfortunately for Nazis, not.
It turned out good.
It turned out good for us. Good. But they were using artificial. I mean, that's where we got most of the technology of synthetic oils, right? It's because the Germans had to use synthetic oils because they didn't have any petrochemicals.
And they're rocket scientists.
Those American rocket scientists, John. Right?
They were all, I mean,
none of them were Nazis.
No. I mean, come on, man.
He was just an unfortunate person of circumstance. He was never a Nazi. He was just a German.
Yeah.
There's
a line in the right stuff.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a line in the right stuff where it says, can we do this? And he says, yes, of course. Our Germans are better than their Germans. And that's what it was.
Right. That's a movie, man.
Yeah.
Well, there's so it was the Focke-Wulf factory that had the TA-183 drawings. The Americans, of course, because all the factory staff, nobody wanted to be captured by the Russians because the Russians, because of the Germans, their Untermensch policy of scorched earth in Russia, likewise just returned the favor. And, you didn't get very good treatment if you're captured by Russia. Got captured by the Americans. The Army. So they all went, headed west to get captured by the Americans. And then the Soviets overran the factory. So the Soviets ended up with all the drawings, but the Americans got all the scientists. So post-war, you had the MiG-15 and you had the Sabre, which used very, very similar kind of concepts,
right?
Based off basically the same German designs. So, obviously with progression and, homegrown innovation and involvement as well. And, of course, the British giving them the jet engine.
Yeah.
Something that even Stalin couldn't believe we were stupid enough to do. But hey, history is a fascinating thing, guys.
It's amazing.
Question here. They make decals for a particular aircraft. Could they make aftermarket sets for other aircraft or squadrons? Absolutely, and they do. There are a vast number of decals available. There was it Testers did a 1/48 scale Bulldog before?
No idea.
Somebody did, because I've seen builds of it, particularly with Barter's aircraft. So somebody makes decals for it. Somebody makes decals for almost everything. Even if not a specific aircraft, you can generally find the squadron and then use the squadron markings. And, they often supply generic numbers, so you could make up whatever, particular aircraft number is on there. If you're in the UK, Hannants is the place to go to try and find decals. Give yourself a good couple of hours to search the website because it's not very user-friendly. But chances are, if they don't have it, it's going to be difficult to find it.
Yeah, there's a huge aftermarket presence of decals.
And if you can't find them, you can make your own. It's easy as long as you kind of stick to certain things. So if you've got a color laser printer, you can buy decal film from basically anywhere, Amazon. There's clear decal film and there's white decal film. Now, if you want to make a decal that has any sort of white on it, you have to get the white decal film, because if you think, all printers rely on white paper for their white. A clear decal film doesn't have that. So there's two ways you can do it. You either have to pre-spray the area that you want white on the aircraft or vehicle and then put your decal over it, or you have to use the white one, and you have to, of course, then trim it very carefully. So there are advantages and disadvantages to both. It's a lot of printing on paper first, designing your decal in whatever software you're using, printing on software, measuring it, redoing it because you've done it 1 millimeter too short. It's simple but boring, repetitive process to make your own decals, but it works really well. I did it on the Fairy Gannet Airfix 148 scale Fairy Gannet, which I did in Australian markings. Haven't got that video out yet. Be out shortly. But all of the Australian markings are different from the RAF ones. They're different sizes, different places. They've got a big navy on one wing and all this kind of stuff. So, but they're all black, so they're very easy to do. Colors, yellow is a little more tricky because yellow printing on printers doesn't tend to be very color dense. So sometimes you have to do 2 passes and be very accurate with how you put things in. So there's kind of little nuances to it, but it's possible. So if you want black and white stuff, you want like the pilot's name, those things are really easy. And decal film, I think it's like £10 for a pack of 10 or something. It's not expensive. So. Who loves PE then? Anybody says yes in the chat, you're banned. That's not true, of course. Yeah. Yeah, they did. Well, basically that was the space race, wasn't it? That was continuation of World War II was the space race.
Yeah.
Which the Americans kind of won, I guess, but the Russians were in the lead for most of it. So. All right. Any finishing thoughts, guys? Because I just noticed we're up to 21:53. I'm just looking through the chat. But any finishing thoughts you have on return? We didn't really cover the subject very well. we talked about it a little bit at the beginning. But any final thoughts on coming back after a break? What you'd recommend? What you'd say to avoid doing? We talked a little bit about having a break to freshen up, but if you've been away for a long break, what would you suggest to do once you first coming back to the bench after 10 or 20 years? So,
wow, something simple and fun to begin with, to remind yourself it's fun, because I guess when we were all doing it in our earlier lives, it was like, I won't say it's a toy, but it's that kind of that whole sort of thing, a creative thing when you're younger. It's a different dynamic to later on in life. I think later on in life, it's a lot more about well-being and what they call it mindfulness. It's about diversion activity. It's about getting a break from the rest of the world just for a while. So don't get too hung up on what you're making to begin with. Try a few different things. nowadays there are so many different types of models. There's so many different types of things. Just try a few different simple things. Just relearn techniques and relearn, and just relearn to fall in love with it again. And then try making a B-26 Marauder or whatever you want to make.
Yeah.
You know, but just egg planes. I know you don't like egg planes.
Oh
but
no!
They're simple. They're
Wait,
quick. They're
Get
fun.
rid of Gary. Yeah.
And you can get, and then you can move on. Then you can move on, you know. Or starter sets, a lot of companies like Airfix do, or things like that. They're simple, especially the new ones that are like sort of 30 pieces, and you've got a Mustang or a BF-109 or whatever. And just learn to love it and just learn to relax and enjoy it. I think that's all I would say. Just learn to enjoy it again.
How about you, John?
What Gary said. I cannot add anything to that.
I feel wise, John. I feel wise. I'm going to take that.
I said, keep pointing at me.
Yeah.
No, I would just say, yeah, I think Gary's kind of hit the nail on the head. I would say, think about what you are doing the hobby for. Think about things that you enjoy or enjoyed. So for me, coming back to the hobby, I always enjoyed it before, but what I really take pleasure in now is really learning about stuff. I think you can probably gather we all kind of do from the discussion tonight, the history of the thing. You know, you learn so much. I find it's one of those hobbies that you learn so much more than you actually thought you would. You know, I'm just going to make the model of this, but you learn about the aircraft, you learn about how it was used, you learn about the problems and the issues and the good bits, and about people who flew it, all that kind of stuff. You don't have to do any of that. But that's one of the things that I like. So that's one of the things I invest time in. If you just want to put the thing together, you can. You don't have to learn any of that. So if you know what you want out of it, you know, don't spend loads of time doing loads of research about the plane and the engines and stuff. If you just want to put it together and you're not concerned about that, because you'll think this is really boring. Why am I reading all this stuff? I'm not gluing stuff. You don't have to. Just glue the stuff. And then the other thing I would say is just take it one step at a time. Because as Gary said, there's so much now. You could just go, oh my God, and just buy everything and try, a mini art kit to start with and just get really disheartened. Walk before you can run. Yeah, do a starter kit. You might think, oh, I'm not a starter, but they're actually really nice kits, and focus on those little quick wins. You can build it like going up a staircase. You don't try and jump to the top step straight away. You go up step by step. Modeling's the same thing. Sometimes you can jump a couple of steps. Sometimes you slip down one. So yeah, just focus on the things that you like, that you enjoy, that you want to get from it. Take your time with it. Do it at your own pace. It's your hobby. So yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't think anything else in the chat, which brings us pretty much to bang on time, which is unusual. So thank you everybody for joining. Had a good number in tonight. Please do check out Gary's stuff. I can never get this right. That way, it feels counterintuitive because it's the opposite.
Yeah, I know.
It's easy for John Alec because he's down there. In his place. Get the Americans down there.
That's right. I'm in the basement.
Please do check out the channels. Check out the buddy build of the F-15 and subscribe to those channels to look out for when those come out. If you've any other questions or comments, please do put them in the comments section of the video after the stream. Always aim to get back to you guys. It's been a pleasure once again. Thank you, Gary, for coming on. Thank you, John. Good to have you back.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you next time. Cheers, guys.
Bye. Thanks.